The phone call, recorded by the FBI on March the 9th, 1990, proves conclusive evidence for John DeCamp.
This is Special Agent Michael F. Mott. Following will be a consensually recorded telephone call between Troy Boner and Alicia Owen.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, what's going on?
I'd like to ask you that.
Talk to me.
No, you talk to me. I don't understand why you're lying. Why are you lying?
What are you talking about?
That's what I'm asking you.
You're calling me why I'm lying?
Yeah.
You can talk to this whole thing, Alicia.
You're full of shit.
Either tell me what's going on.
You're full of shit.
Hey, look.
Who do you have listening on this line?
I have nobody listening to me. I'm listening to you, and I'm hoping you give me some fucking answers.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know what kind of game you're playing.
I'm not trying to play a game.
And I don't know who you have listening to this phone call.
You're being stupid, Alicia. I'm not going to go to jail for you. And that's what's going to happen.
Why don't you go to jail? Jail for telling the truth?
No, jail for lying.
What have you lied about?
I haven't lied.
Okay, but why are...
Listen, shut up. Listen to me. You're not out here being talked to them every day. The pressure's kind of hard.
You literally have to have bricks for brains to take on the FBI in this country. And that's exactly what you'd have to do this properly. They now, in my opinion, in my investigation, are the architects of the cover-up.
We asked the FBI for an interview about its investigation of the Franklin scandal.
Larry Holmquist with the FBI here. We feel it would be inappropriate for us to comment. We work this with the Omaha Police Department, and we just don't feel it would be appropriate for us to make comments.
As Gary Caradori and Karen Ormiston sought out new witnesses on the streets of Omaha, they found themselves under constant threat.
Gary was threatened several times. His vehicles were tampered with. I would think whoever tampered with them, it was a scare tactic because it was so obvious that they were being tampered with.
Gary there was one piece of evidence I know he got that he even said he got one step ahead of him this time. He told us about this book. It was like addresses, telephone numbers, names. He said if they knew he had it, they'd kill him.
On July the 11th, 1990, Gary Caradori and his 8-year-old son, AJ, were flying home from Chicago. They had watched the All-Stars baseball game, and Caradori had been pursuing new leads.
Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board are in Harold Cameron's cornfield trying to determine what caused this private plane to crash, killing its 2 occupants.
The bodies of Gary Caradori and 8-year-old AJ were found in the wreckage.
National Transportation Safety Board investigators say wreckage from the crash is apparently strewn over a 3/4 to 1 mile long stretch in this field.
The fact that the wreckage is scattered over a large area certainly demonstrates that it did break up in flight. The exact mechanism of breakup yet is still unknown.
The federal investigation was never able to discover what tore the plane apart.
There are things missing from the plane. His briefcase is missing. Again, we'll never know what all was missing because I don't know what he had with him. I don't know what he did in Chicago. He may have had information he was coming back with.
Within 24 hours of the tragedy, FBI agents impounded all records of the investigation. Gary's widow, Sandy, is still unable to come to terms with her loss.
As a mother, I don't want to ever think that somebody murdered my child, let alone my husband. But I think if you'd ever talk to any parent, be it mother or father, that's ever lost a child, I mean, the worst thing that you can think of is that somebody would want to murder a child.
I really feel that somebody killed my brother. And inside me, I know that somebody killed my brother. If somebody could help us out somewhere, somebody knows something. And may God help those who did that to him and his family.
Gary Caradori's death pricked Troy Bonner's conscience. He promised Sandy that he would recant his recantation and tell the truth.
I set the record straight. I was, going to do it. And would, the truth would come out, and somebody would be held accountable for his death. And then at the funeral I had seen, FBI guys, and they looked at me. I was supposed to meet Senator Labetz and Schmidt for lunch after the funeral. And, that's when I decided, I told my mom, we're not going to do the lunch. We're going to hightail it out of Lincoln now.
The effect of Gary's crash on the investigation, I think, in effect, put an end to anybody else coming forward with sensitive information like this.
That's when I was finished, because I figured out if they murdered Gary and his son, there was nothing that would stop them. There was no piece of paper, there was nothing we could come up with that was going to get anything done.
Under pressure from the FBI, Troy Bonner agreed to tell a Douglas County grand jury investigating Larry King that he and Alicia Owen had concocted the entire child abuse story on payment of a $500 bond. Troy Bonner was to be the star witness against Alicia Owen, but he grew uneasy about maintaining what he claims were the lies fed to him by the FBI. But when his brother Sean died in an inexplicable gun accident, Troy and his family were convinced they'd been sent a warning message.
And they killed him just flat out, right? Somehow, professionally, made something happen, to shut me up.
The purpose of Sean's death? To instill fear. And it worked.
Do I feel guilty about my brother? Yes, I do. That's where all this is coming from. That's where the energy is coming from that I'm getting to do this. Is for him, because it should have been me there instead of him. Really. I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad, but he was brilliant and innocent. It should have been me. He had so much to give. I've taken so much. It should have been the other way around.
I can explain to you what it feels like to lose a child. But when you see the pain your kids have because of that, it's much worse. I can't do anything for them. I can't take that pain away for them.
Lauren Schmidt's legislative committee issued a report denouncing the grand jury. 2 months later, it was disbanded, leaving Schmidt a broken man.
The message was not lost on most politicians in Nebraska. I think the message that was delivered was, if any legislative committee ever tries to conduct a thorough investigation again, the same thing will happen. It has shaken my faith in the institutions of government. I used to be a firm believer that the system would work, and that people who did things wrong would be punished. And we discovered victims who claimed to have been abused and who the grand jury acknowledged had been abused. But they did not try to find out who had abused those individuals. Instead, they convicted Alicia Owen of perjury. Indefensible from my point of view.
In July 1991, Alicia Owen was convicted of perjury. Her sentence was between 9 and 25 years.
I can't find a case in the history of this country where some kid got sentenced to
25 or 30 years in prison for something like this. If you were going to pick a what I call a tell sign, something that says something fishy about the whole thing, it was in the sentencing itself. For some reason, they had to send a signal to every kid who was a potential witness. My opinion again. A signal so loud and clear, if you dare to come forward, if you dare to talk, watch what happens.
3 months later, Larry King was jailed for the $40 million fraud. He was given a 15-year sentence, 10 years less than Alicia Owen. John DeCamp is now the only man fighting to help Larry King's victims. He's become the lawyer for Paul Benassi and Alicia Owen.
I live in Nebraska. Hell, I was born here, raised here. I have 4 kids growing up here. Like it or not, it's my heritage, you know. Well, if it's a dirty cesspool that I got to live in or look back on that I left, that ain't good. The real cost, if I were going to say to my family, has been the fear and intimidation it's put in some of the kids. A couple of the kids are really, really frightened and really had some sleeping problems over it, you know, hear this or that. So that's been the real concern I've had.
In the face of mysterious threats, John has turned for advice to his friend and one-time boss, former head of the CIA, Bill Colby.
Old Bill Colby told me better than anything. The one thing that the bad people can't afford is publicity, and knocking you off right now or doing something obvious to one of your kids would bring them more trouble than it's worth.
I said, you have to consider the possibility of some danger to not only your reputation, but to your person. I mean, people do react rather violently to some kinds of charges, or particularly if they're true, there's more apt to be a negative reaction than if they're false. If they're false charges, then they can be reacted to in a normal way, by a libel suit or whatever. But if there's truth in it, there can be a danger in that situation. We've seen that happen in other cases.
John DeCamp has arranged to meet Troy Bonner, the young man he sees as the key to the cover-up.
He's in great danger. The reason is he carries the secret, so to speak. He served his purpose for the FBI and others by committing the lies that put the seal on the cover-up. His greatest safety probably lies in doing exactly what he knows he should do, that is exposing the whole thing, taking one final last chance and telling the truth.
My fears are that, you know, I'm not going to be believed again. It's just, you know, going to be a whole other kind of exploitation like it was last time. You know, and afraid that that's going to happen, or, you know, I might end up dead, or a loved one might end up dead again. I want this to go forward and have something done so that all those other kids who are a lot worse, more worse things have happened to can come forward and see that action can be taken, because there are a lot of other kids out there that, you know, things happen to them that, you know, a lot worse than happened to me.
You have to, if you want to protect yourself and your life and your family's life, both now and particularly in the future, is to use the institutions of government that have been set up to protect you and make them work. That means you go into federal court, you go after the people that have done this cover-up, and you expose it so there's no longer any percentage on their part in eliminating you because the secret's out.
That's why we're here today, to let it out.
I have no doubt that he's now telling the truth, number one, and number two, that he originally told the truth. Potentially, they could decide to charge him with perjury, because now he is telling that they forced me to lie. I did lie at Alicia's trial. I did lie before the grand jury. I did it because the authorities were forcing me to do it, and I was scared for my family. My brother had been killed when I tried to back out the one time. Potentially, they could charge him with perjury this time.
Alicia Owen is out of prison and on bail, while DeCamp appeals against her perjury conviction. As he prepares for a court hearing, new evidence of the cover-up emerges, and once again it involves Troy Bonner's evidence.